Do rabbis heart cheshvan? Apparently they do. On today's show, we recap our holidays, discuss the best ways for the Jewish community to commemorate October 7th in the future, and debate the relevance of the New York City mayoral race. Or, in other words, do you want to mess with the Zohran? I'm Avi Feingold, and along with Yedida Eisenstadt and Matthew Leibel, we are not in heaven. We are back. Happy Cheshvan, everybody. How's it going?
I'm very excited that this is a full week. Also, that we're back. I've missed you guys lots.
Me too. I've definitely missed you. And I too am quite exhausted. Cheshvan is a welcome time in my life.
Ditto. Can we do like a quick recap of the past month or so? Matthew, how did the services, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur?
It was great. We had a really nice crowd. Kind of very consistent, our third year doing it. And it was a ton of work to write the 3 sermons, to lead the services, to be worried about being on time. This person needs a ticket and all that kind of stuff, right? Like at the last second, or the kids are too loud. The kids are way too loud in the back. And so I got exhausted. And then you can't even really recover because Sukkot is right away. And we even had my wife's parents who were incredibly helpful, but they were staying with us. So it just felt like there was just so many things going on in my life. And like I said to you guys before, I feel like I haven't had the true, genuine congregant, I call it, experience for Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur in now over 20 years. It's just such a busy time. And then, just other things in between. I love when people are like, oh, you got through Yom Kippur. It's awesome. Because most of the people I deal with just go back to their regular lives. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just beginning.
Do you rabbi over Sukkot also?
At the nursing home. We've got all kinds of services, like for both days of Yontif at the beginning, Shmini Atzeret, which this year, as always, had a Yizkor and a special Yizkor because we had October 7th in there. And then we have a huge party for Simchat Torah.
Simchat Torah in a old Jewish nursing home sounds like it would, I don't know. I kind of I think it would be fun to bring my kids to that.
Oh my gosh, it would. It's like Purim too. It's so fun. When we do Hakafot and we get the keyboard out now and it's very musical. Oh, it's a highlight. It really is. It's just at the end of everything. It's kind of hard sometimes to you fire yourself up one last time and then you collapse on the floor. It's kind of how but it was all good. It was all so meaningful. And it's not like I don't find meaning, but it's different because I feel like I get my meaning in those experiences from seeing other people get their meaning. Like I don't get it directly. I get it. Does this make sense? I see other people doing Yom Kippur and I feel Yom Kippur kind of through them. It's a vicarious. Mm-hmm. It's backwards almost.
Yeah, no, I get it. But that's why you're in the service industry. You work to please other people. I mean, rabbinics is that. Let's be honest. It's kind of crass to say it that way, but I think there's a nobility in saying that, no, I often give up. One often gives up their spiritual enrichment, their personal spiritual enrichment, in order to enrich the lives of hundreds of others, and thereby you get your enrichment like that. I
was telling some of my family that you don't go to your wife's service. And they were as flabbergasted as I was, which was reassuring that I wasn't on an island. And so I was wondering, did I guilt you into going and checking her out or no?
Nope.
We've talked about how my family and I went last minute to the Pearlstone Hadar High Holiday Rosh Hashanah retreat with our producer Zach. So it was so fun to go road tripping a little bit with Zach and for Zach to meet all my family and my chaos. But I actually left the service that my husband was leading prayers in because I was service curious. And I went over to the main minyan and the davening was really energetic and different than what I'd experienced before. And it was different in a way that made me think and reconsider and, do I like this better? Do I like that better? And I really, it was a more joyful tefillah than I am used to. And I needed that. But overall, it was really meaningful and it was something different that I didn't realize that I needed. So that was Rosh Hashanah. Sukkot was home and it was the norm and my parents visited, which is always nice.
That's what I was saying too. You had Ushpizin as well. It's so helpful, but it's more people and there's more things going on. And I always say it adds more bodies, more chaos, more of a disruption to your routine.
The weather here is actually really nice on Sukkot. It's really nice to sit in a sukkah, not in your winter coat. And
we had a nice stretch.
not bragging, but we were out a lot. We entertained a bunch. There's like so it wasn't stressful because I was not catering constantly.
That's great.
I, on the other hand, was catering constantly. There were a lot of meals in the sukkah, a lot of meals Rosh Hashanah. It's fine. I'm done. Thankfully, like, I gotta say, the thing that I'm the most proud of my sukkah this year, of anything that involved the sukkah, was the sign that I put up, that I designed myself.
The Shake Shack.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Sorry.
And I had a picture in the green, in the exact
Incredible.
2D thing of the shake of the lulav and the shack of the sukkah, and people loved it. I actually had like random people drive by to like take pictures of like the sign. That was great. People kept asking when they came to the sukkah where the drive-through was. And I was like, someday I have to be able to do that.
You could sell them on Etsy.
I could, but I like to keep it like as my thing. And then next year I'll put it inside the sukkah and I'll come up with an even better sign for the outside. Remember last year I had Live, Laugh, Lulav, which was like really embracing these suburban vibes. Yeah, we'll see what next year holds. The thing that I think was notable for me also was noting how various communities were choosing to celebrate or commemorate, I should say, October 7th, and where some commemorated it on October 7th or as close to as possible. What's your guys' take on like the future commemorations? Like, where are we going to be going with October 7th commemorations? Do you think it's right to stick it with October 7th? Do you think we want to like attach it to Shmini Atzeret in some way in Simchat Torah going forward? Some combination of the two?
I think some of it is organic, but I also think that because we've been calling it October 7th for so long, just like 9/11, that October 7th sticks more, right? Or like the Black Shabbat also has had some stickiness. I think I would prefer it on October 7th. I think we can definitely acknowledge it on Simchat Torah, which will be forever changed by it. But I don't know. It feels to me more like a secular commemoration along the lines of like Kristallnacht memorials that I go to, rather than something to happen in shul every Simchas Torah morning forever.
This year we did a moment of silence on the 7th of October before our Sukkot service started at the nursing home because Zman Simchatenu, like they didn't fit to do it at the same time. So we did our moment of silence at the beginning. We organized it. We acknowledged it, and then we went into the service, and then we did it on Shmini Atzeret, which I guess is the Hebrew date.
So here's my hot take. Are you guys ready? First of all, if we were to be celebrating something or commemorating something, I like the idea of situating it around Shmini Atzeret, especially because it puts the dates of like the release of the hostages and the taking of the hostages almost exactly together. And we were able to say, this happened on this day, and this happened exactly 2 years later, whatever the day of, like 2 years later, they were able to celebrate in shul exactly. And that's the beginning and the cessation of this sort of thing. But I don't think we should be commemorating it at all. I think maybe like adding a line in the Yizkor of specifically Shmini Atzeret might be something useful to say, the same way that some people have a Yizkor for the Holocaust or whatever. But in general, I would move away from thinking about October 7th again and again and again, because I really think that puts us on the wrong footing for being a tragedy-focused people. And we're already very focused on that as a people, and we need to focus on other better things in our life.
It's an interesting take. I don't think that communities are going to just stop commemorating October 7th. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, Avi. I mean, there's a lot of thought in that I agree with.
I'm of like a million minds, unsurprisingly. I think it does make sense to acknowledge that October 7th is another date in 2,000-3,000 year history on which, calamity befell the Jewish people. I think that when it's so fresh, it's really hard to gain perspective and sort of lump it in with everything else.
It's like the stopping of saying Tehillim or prayers for the hostages. If you don't stop it at a certain point, you're going to keep going, because you can't say no to like. Yeah.
We're still in that purgatory now, right? Because not all the bodies are back, and is the ceasefire going to hold? Right, like it's still very, very, very fresh. Which here's a little bit of Torah, because I was just working on this passage. There's a Tannaitic text, the Tosefta, in chapter 15 of Masechet Sota, talks about mourning after the temple was destroyed. And it talks about how there were people who stopped eating meat and they stopped drinking wine. And because they felt like eating meat and drinking wine devalued or disrespected the sacrifices that were no longer brought in the temple. And comes along Rabbi Yehoshua and he says, well, according to that logic, then you also have to stop eating grapes and everything that first fruits were brought on. And, we used to pour water on the altar on Sukkot in the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. So I think you have to stop drinking water also. And he he takes the logic to its absurd end to make the rhetorical point that you can't stop living your life. And then the practical thing that they come up with in the end is to implement smaller things that people can do to remind themselves of the destruction in the day-to-day, right? So leaving a little bit of the painting in the front of your house or the plaster unfinished. One thing that Tosefta mentions is that women, when they adorn themselves, should leave, take off a piece of jewelry after you're finished getting dressed. And then the passage ends with verses from Isaiah that say that those who mourn for Jerusalem also will get to partake in the rejoicing when it is time to rejoice. And I think this is really powerful, but I think it also speaks to the psychology of different stages of grief. And I don't think that we're not past it yet, right? All of the living hostages, thank God, have been returned. The war may or may not be over. Hopefully it is. We don't have all of the bodies back. Is there a closure? We don't have a long, durable, lasting peace yet. Right? I think the question of what to do on Simchas Torah is a question for next year and 5 years from now. I think it was there wasn't really time to think about it this year.
That's really interesting. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what the future holds. And speaking of futures, I want to move to our main topic of the day. A decision about the future that has energized and concerned a lot of Jews around the world, and that's the future of the New York mayoral race. More about that coming up.
Ever since October 7th, 2023, Muslim and Jewish communities in Canada have been torn apart.
I've known you for 20 years. You've been at my house for Shabbat supper, I don't know how many times. And for 1 second, you can't put down your friend and just hold my hand?
We're fed a constant stream of Jews and Muslims talking at each other, about each other, but rarely do we hear them talking to each other.
Why are you doing this? What's the benefit of doing this?
This podcast aims to do something different. I'm Avi Feingold, a rabbi and a writer with the Canadian Jewish News.
I'm Yafa Sakeja, a Canadian-Palestinian entrepreneur and volunteer with the Canadian Friends of Standing Together.
We're sitting down with Jews and Muslims, Israelis and Palestinians from coast to coast and across the political divide, having difficult conversations in good faith.
We are not the Israeli government. Palestinians are not Hamas.
This is the place where we're both supposed to end up, Israeli and Palestinian, Arab and Jewish.
Subscribe to In Good Faith, wherever you listen to podcasts.
For months, Zohran Mamdani has held a double-digit lead in the New York City mayoral race, home to over 2 million Jews, or about 11% of the city's population. The 34-year-old firebrand burst onto the scene with a whole set of fresh progressive ideas, but his candidacy has forced a reckoning in the city's Jewish community. He says he doesn't use the slogan Globalize the intifada himself, but he does not condemn those who do. And that, while Israel has a right to exist, he's not comfortable supporting a state that has a hierarchy of citizenship based on religion or ethnicity. Many Jews are shocked and scared by the prospect of a Mamdani victory. They see his criticism of Israel as a thin veil for anti-Semitism, and that his election would create a permission structure for more aggressive hostility in New York towards Israel and its supporters. But according to a recent Fox News poll, 38% of the city's Jews do plan on voting for Mamdani. Some because they don't think the mayor of New York has much influence over Middle Eastern geopolitics. Others because they fear a future where Israel becomes a global pariah, ruling over the rubble of Gaza and the West Bank. A future that would endanger the lives of Jews in Israel and in the diaspora. Yedida.
So Zohran Mamdani, for a lot of progressive people, including progressive Jews, is a very compelling candidate. He identifies as a democratic socialist. He has big dreams and big ideas for New York City. And some of the things that are a plus for many voters are that he has said that he would arrest Bibi Netanyahu if he, goes to New York because of the ICC's warrant out for Netanyahu.
I saw they said that in Canada too.
Then
though, right?
I was going to say, then again, Mark Carney said the same thing.
Netanyahu isn't traveling. It's either of these places right now, apparently. And is this part of his platform?
No.
It's just part of who he is.
I want to talk about
He's not running based on like anything. It's just these things have come up.
He does identify as an anti-Zionist. He is pro-BDS.
But just like the bigger question for me is, so I understand that a couple of rabbis have come out and been quite outspoken from the pulpit, saying, don't vote for this guy, vote for somebody else.
So, yes, I mean, we have a great big can of worms to unpack today, but there's a lot of things, obviously, that Jews are worried about. One of them is that, like, he represents the ripping off of the Band-Aid, right? That he is introducing anti-Zionist discourse and mainstreaming it and saying, he's moving the Overton window and saying being anti-Zionist and being a public politician in the United States, hey, we're here. I think the US has sort of had that on the margins for a long time, but the mayor of New York is a really big deal, and it's both ironic and symbolic and really important to note that this is happening in the one place with the highest concentration of Jews outside of Israel. And that's really important to note, just sort of something that like I've been thinking about as I've been prepping to talk about this, is that it's really interesting to me, right? Like the two major centers of Jews in the world today obviously are like Israel, the center for Zionism, and New York City, which like in a way in this debate sort of represents diaspora nationalism. And the other candidates are also very flawed and not especially compelling. Andrew Cuomo comes with a lot of baggage too. Eric Adams, lots of baggage, right? Like, I think it's really also like, we can talk about Zohran Mamdani as a complex candidate and what that means for Israel and American Jews and Zionism and diaspora nationalism and how we prioritize our various political priorities and how we vote. But like Andrew Cuomo's, I don't love him either. I don't want to vote for him. So I'm not voting.
So to make sure, and like we briefly touch on this, none of this stuff is related to his platform, which is incredibly popular because he's saying stuff like rent freezes and creating this idea for like, publicly owned grocery stores where people can buy food that isn't marked up. He has all of these very big populist ideas. It's the type of thing that really fires up the young, energetic base of people that you want to get fired up about your campaign. And that is what he is riding to what is likely going to be a victory. And nowhere in his platform does it talk about Israel or about his anti-Zionism. He has been very outspoken about this. And
he is going to end a program. He talks about ending a program that Eric Adams started that was promoting business ties between New York businesses and businesses in Israel and wanting to end that. So that doesn't make it anti-Israel, but also like, why did that program exist? And like, does ending it qualify as anti, like, what is that? Anyway, like, it's complicated.
Right.
And for the record also, he has been asked about this and what it means to govern a city that is like significantly Jewish. He recognizes that he has to be the mayor for everybody, and not everybody likes those positions, but that doesn't mean that he is going to govern using those positions. And everybody, when they get into power, often their positions get softened because they know that they have to govern for a lot of people.
Right. So the question I think that you asked earlier about like, why is Israel playing such an outsized part in a New York mayoral election is a good question. And I think the answer is because Jews have made it so, right? Like all of this like pearl clutching and debating and all these thought pieces and like all this political discussion is sort of Jews debating whether or not he's an acceptable candidate and why he is and why he isn't. And, whether or not Israel like should take priority, right?
To be fair, this is nothing that hasn't been done for decades and decades, even in Canada, where all that you go to your MP and as a Jewish community, you say, well, where do you stand on Israel? Where do you stand on Israel? I'm like, it doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying, because
what goes on in Winnipeg doesn't actually matter with what goes on in Israel, but you have to have a stand on this piece of foreign policy.
Right. Well, because we want to understand somebody's thinking and attitudes. Right. So I think, and especially in New York, because there are so many Jews.
As we've established, 1.9 million. It's an enormous number. It's not 1 million, it's 2 million. It's an enormous number.
So we saw Elliot Cosgrove making the argument that Mayor Mamdani, if he is elected, actually poses a threat to the Jewish communities. And I think I want to make a distinction between sort of like talking about politics from the pulpit because you don't like somebody's like business policies, or you don't like the platform that they're putting forward for education. You don't like that they're going to raise taxes on this, or they're not going to freeze rents. All of that feels to me qualitatively different than this, I think, like existential concern that a lot of Jews are feeling because Jews were very recently gunned down on the streets of Washington, D.C. because they were Jews, and Jews have been killed in Manchester, and there's been a lot of anti-Jewish physical violence in New York City and LA and the attack in Boulder, right? So given now that we are seeing this like real increase in anti-Jewish violence, the question of will the mayor of New York protect his Jewish population, or does his rhetoric fuel or contribute or give tacit approval to the people who are using Israel as a reason to attack Jews, like, is a real question. I understand that concern. I don't know if I agree with it, but I think that the language, right, the existential concern that I think we hear coming from these rabbis expressing their concern about Mamdani as a mayor is real. And also, I don't even hear them saying, hold your nose and vote for Andrew Cuomo.
The problem is that there's not really alternatives, and they're trying to say, well, if everybody does this, then maybe we have a chance. And they kind of realize that it's not going to happen, which also begs the question, like, why are you even doing this? If you know that very likely he is going to win and you are not going to necessarily get, maybe they do think that they're going to be able to turn the tide at the last minute.
Pressure from people within their communities who need them to go on the record as having that position.
I can't see this ending well for the Jews, despite the fact that I don't think, and he is likely going to be the mayor, and I don't think life is going to change for Jews in New York. I think that he is going to prosecute crimes against Jews whenever they are prosecutable. He is not going to go and say, well, that's just against the Zionists, so we're going to be like okay with that. That is not going to happen. That is my strong prediction, right, for New York and beyond.
I tend to agree with you too. I tend to agree with you. Like, I don't know what the mayor of Boulder, Colorado is like. I don't know what the mayor of any of these places are like. And if they didn't tell us what his feelings were on this, we wouldn't know. So, I mean, like, I think the New York voters have to vote as New York voters. And I get everything you said, Yedida, but I don't know. It just feels like, I don't know. It's overreaction every day of the week to everything. And I never know if they're overreacting or they're not. Right. And I just don't know.
Totally, that's part of the like funhouse gaslit.
And rabbis from the Bima being like, this is the exception until the next time you tell me it's the exception.
So
like,
here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about lack of historical consciousness, and I'm worried about overreading the present in light of the past and being one of those historians who like sees everything as terrible all the time because they're always like interpreting everything through the Holocaust. And my dad used to say, not necessarily about this, but like, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean somebody isn't watching you.
Yeah.
And like, there's the problem. I mean, if the murders on Washington, D.C. hadn't happened, and if that recent attack over Yontif in Manchester hadn't happened, like, maybe we'd be talking about something, like, it would be a little bit different. But, like, this is real. We are in a moment where it's not just, like, theoretical anti-Semitism and, like, the whole, like, is anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, like, that's sort of in this here, too. But, like...
Well, no, that's what this thing is, if you ask me, right? Because he is trying to test the city of New York by saying, look, I am not an anti-Semite, I am anti-Israel, I am an anti-Zionist, and I believe that there is a strong difference about it.
Okay, but here's the problem with that. And I'm not necessarily taking this position, but I am pointing to this problem. he now, I read somewhere, is, I think, trying to discourage the use of the phrase globalize the intifada.
Good for him.
Great. Hold on. Nope, not done. But when Jews hear that phrase, they hear kill the Jews. Mm-hmm. And to deny that globalize the intifada means that to Jews, right? To tell us that what we are hearing is not an anti-Semitic dog whistle. You can't do that to any other minority group. Every other minority group gets to say, we feel like we are under attack and you have to take us seriously and not dismiss us. And maybe he is taking us seriously and not dismissing us, but there are a lot of Jews who don't feel that they are being taken seriously.
He is clearly walking back his early comments. And this is what happens. People that are young say things and they don't want to be held accountable to it. To me, this is like his turnaround. I don't have a problem.
There's plenty. Or is it just political?
Only time
He's a
will
politician.
tell.
I'd be surprised what's sincere. I don't know what anything's sincere with this guy.
So he's
a politician, not just him. Anybody. You know, like someone said, would I care if the mayor of Winnipeg had anti-Israel views? I mean, I would care in the sense that I don't get it. I mean, I think that it's very possible that the mayor of Winnipeg could have these views. I don't know. I know the mayor a little bit. I don't think so. Scott Gillingham is our mayor, by the way. He's come to a couple of Jewish events, and he seems like a very swell guy. But a lot of people I don't know have anti-Israel views, because right now, for the last 2 years, there's been a very anti-Israel current in the world, and a lot of people think that you're cheering for the right side when you say ceasefire now and stop the genocide. Like, we're trying to stand up for human rights, and I get that, so am I. But it's not like that.
And
right?
where are they now?
Well, yes.
Well, so this is the question is, if this happens, then it, as you said, it opens the door to other non-staunchly Zionist major politicians, right? He is only a mayor of a city. He is not a state or a federal, elected official. And yet, we assume in the Jewish community that every major elected official has to be staunchly pro-Israel. And this is where the tide seems to be turning. And maybe there are people that are going to be neutral. Maybe there are going to be people, maybe there are going to be people that are anti-Israel. And we kind of have to suck it up, I think, to sort of say like, hey, not everybody's going to be staunchly for us. That doesn't mean that they're bad people. That means that they may have 90% great policies. They may just have a few things that aren't good for us, but are good for everybody else, or they're neutral on Israel. And, that's it.
And he's not making foreign policy. And
right.
just, there's a huge number of Jews who support him.
We would be remiss, by the way, and if we didn't mention the fact that the IRS, this is for the first time the IRS has relaxed the rules on religion and politics mixing, and saying that you can speak politics from the pulpit and you do not lose your nonprofit status. And that has allowed people to go ahead and be able to speak what they want. This is completely un-Canadian, so it might be foreign to a lot of our listeners, but this is important that this has happened over the past year in America, and it has opened the gates for these people who are still, many of them are still saying, nevertheless, I want you to know that I believe in that piece, but this one is so existential that I, want to exercise the right that I have in there. And I do think that, as you've said, that it is a huge mistake. I don't know. I don't think that this is a good thing to be doing, but
totally,
that's my opinion.
Huge mistake.
I'm less
too. I agree with
willing
you
to call this a strike, but I just want to observe that, I don't think that they made this decision lightly. I really do think that for people in New York who are coming out, not because the rule has changed, but I think that they wouldn't necessarily come out and take a side, vote for, vote against on, like I said, like a policy about taxes going up or education policy or, whether or not they should build the Second Avenue subway. I really think that this feels existential, and that's why they've taken to their pulpit and taken political positions. Yeah. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
All right. Doesn't mean it was a good decision. It means it was a big deal, and I'm sure that they considered it very carefully. They probably, I don't know, maybe they even coordinated and were like,
I would never think for a second that they rushed, but I just think that.
Listen, I mean, Cuomo made a mess, and he's trying to have a political comeback now, and he's not a great candidate. And I think there are a lot of Jews who are like, well, Cuomo's not a great guy, and if Mamdani didn't hold his positions about Israel, I would 100% be on board. And I, like his democratic socialist policies, and it's time for some young blood. And I think that there are a lot of people saying, like, why should my Israel politics be part of how I vote in the New York mayoral election if I think that this guy is the best candidate? And I made this argument on an earlier podcast also, that like growing up in Canada, did I prioritize my Jewish stuff, or did I prioritize my general Canadian what's best for Canada? And, it's every individual person like weighs this out for themselves. And
Yedida, are you 6-7ing right now?
I've seen headlines about that. I don't know what it is.
What is that? Yeah, I don't know.
It is such a nothing burger of a nothing that like kids like it. It became this number thing that like was a meme. We can just totally ignore it. But the record needs to be said that Yedida did the 6-7 hand gesture, and I have teen parents.
Isn't that also?
I'm a parent of teens, and that's
Isn't that the God scales hand gesture also, or like weighing any considerations against each other hand gesture?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Absolutely.
All of which is to say, I'm always happy to negotiate and debate politics in places where I don't actually have to vote. But thankfully, in elections that I do have to vote in and want to vote in, there's usually a clear choice. So it seems to me that like for New Yorkers who are steeped in this, their choices are like informed by their experience and walking down the street and going on the subway and talking to their neighbors. Just like Israelis who vote in Israel, who vote for a government that I wouldn't necessarily elect, are voting because of their experience and their conversations and their lived experience.
Yeah, like anywhere. Yeah, totally. Like anywhere, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's put a pin in this, and let's move on to some textual healing.
Textual healing. It's time for some textual healing. Let's get biblical. Tell me a parsha, and we'll make it physical. Textual healing. It's time for some textual healing.
Okay, well, the parsha this week is Noach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was just going to say that Noach in the fall is often a very popular bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah portion. And so I always talk about, like, there are some parshiyot that lend themselves to a very, very straightforward. You ask every kid every year, and it's like a 101, like bar mitzvah 101 question when you're the rabbi preparing their speech. And for Noach, it's that great story about the comparison between Noach and the guy in a fur coat. Chasidim Peltz, I think is what it's called, right? Like the comparison being like the guy in the fur coat on a cold day, he keeps himself warm, but he didn't light the fire that could have warmed up a whole bunch of other people. Noach built this ark. He saved all the animals, but he saved his kids and their wives and his wife and himself. But at the end of the day, he didn't save anybody else. And so, this whole debate, that along with the other side of the coin, right? Like Noach was righteous, but is righteous relative, right? Was he righteous in a time when everyone else was an absolute 0 out of 10 and he was really only like a 5 out of 10? Or was he actually like a 10 out of 10 in any generation? So these are the two like bar bat mitzvah 101 questions you ask the kids about Noach, and they usually produce a lot of really great results and a lot of great conversations and get them thinking about like a really fantastic character of the early Torah, not Jewish. My wife once asked me, what was Noah's wife's name? And I said, Noah's wife. And she said, come on. I said, you're right. That's the Torah. But if you look in the Midrash, I believe her name is Naamah.
Mm-hmm. There's a ton of weird Second Temple literature that
I think Naamah
gives her a name. Hold on, I'm looking. But
like that whole idea, like these ideas of like was Noach truly righteous? Like Noach brings a lot of these thoughts to me. I'm not doing giving a direction, but just food for thought that comes from the parsha in this week's textual healing, I guess.
Noach's wife in Jubilees and the Genesis Apocryphon was Em Zara, which means mother of seed, recognizing her role in repopulating the world.
That I did not know.
That's crazy, but there is something
that's really cool
in Midrash
everybody needs Volume 2 of the Posen Library of Jewish Culture and Civilization.
Okay, but in Genesis Rabbah, it is Na'amah, so I'm not a completely
Okay.
like making this up sort of thing. Okay, good. Double check that. Yeah, good.
I wanted to talk for a minute about how the covenant that God makes with Noah at the end maybe reflects to us a little bit about what it was that humanity was doing wrong that caused their destruction. So at the beginning of the story, I just tried to look this up. I think it says, V'timaleh haaretz Hamas, that the world was filled with not making a political statement. And yes, people love to say, oh, Hamas is bad. But yes, Hamas is bad.
Yeah, can we have a moratorium on Divrei Torah that talk about
that? Right? No, I was trying to just get that out of the way. I'm getting that out of the way. When God makes the rainbow the sign of the covenant, which I just read, the rainbow, the bow hanging up is like a warrior hanging up their bow. Ta-da, Keshet. So that's the end. It's supposed to like signify the end of violence. But the deal is that people are not supposed to kill each other anymore, right? Somebody who kills another person will then be killed. And that's supposed to put the end on the sort of murderous violence of humanity. And the concession to that on sort of our murderous impulse is that God then allows us to kill and eat animals. And I want to just end this with a question, right? The rabbis imagine that there are sort of 7 universal commandments that are given to all of humanity called the Noahide laws.
Yeah.
And Maimonides asks the question of whether it matters whether a person keeps those laws because they recognize God as God, the one and only moral God who demands that a person observe these laws, or because they're good laws and they, support a just society. And just to take it back to Rosh Hashanah, the theme throughout the Rosh Hashanah davening, I learned in a wonderful shiur with Rabbi Eli Confer at Pearlstone, is that God is king. And what we're praying for and what we're hoping for throughout the liturgy on Rosh Hashanah is that the entire world recognize God as king. And along with recognizing God as king comes the morality and justice that God demands. And that's all wrapped up in this week's Parsha. I'm done.
I like that. I had a friend who, for years, every year on Shabbat Parshat Noach, would host a Fleisch Fest, where every dish Friday night, it was like a huge potluck, and every dish had to have meat in it, in some component or other, from like the challah all the way through to the dessert, and like to celebrate the fact that like this is the Shabbos, where we're allowed to eat meat. And I always thought that was a little much, although it's a lot of fun to have a meal like that, but kind of feels very Parsha-y. I want to talk about a really fascinating midrash. We know about the image of the dove with the olive branch in its mouth, and that's a sign of peace, but that's also the sign that the world is now peaceful and we can go back and populate the world. But the lesser known bird that got sent out is the raven, right? Noah sends out this raven and it comes back. There's no place for it to land. And then the next time he sends out the dove, and the third time the dove doesn't even come back. So there's a midrash that tells of a conversation that Noah and the raven actually have. And, the raven goes and says, hey, why'd you pick me for like this mission? Like, why am I getting it's almost like a suicide mission. I don't know what's going on. Why are you sending me on this thing? And Noah goes and says, listen, the world doesn't even need you. Right? You're not really edible. You're not kosher for a sacrifice. And so therefore I'm sending you out because if there's no ravens left in the world, no big deal. And God then goes and tells Noah, don't say that, gives him like Noah a hard time and, punishes him, or I don't know, at least gives him like a strong talking to. And he says one day a drought is going to like be permeating over the land of Israel, and the raven is going to be the thing that brings food for Eliyahu Hanavi to help Eliyahu survive the famine, and that's the reason why the raven is there. And there's another piece of Talmud that explains this sort of like this whole dialogue, because this dialogue seems a little weird. Like, why are we talking about this? And it then goes in and says, well, the raven is one of the only 3 animals in the world that actually gets along with its own kind. right? Like humans are always competing with other humans, right? Lions, if there's a single piece of prey there, they're going to be fighting for it because it's survival of the fittest. Like ravens actually look out for each other and share properly and decently and nicely. So my little piece that I think is really fascinating is that if the whole purpose of destroying the world was about theft, right? This Hamas, as you said, this like thieving, robbery, whatever,
Violence.
and violence, whatever. But the Midrash does talk about the idea that they would steal from each other. There was a lot of weird financial stuff going on. And the raven is the thing that shares, right? It's the lesson that Noah has to learn, that I'm saving this creature because this is a creature that shares. And you better take like note for the future. If you want the world not to be totally destroyed again, pay attention to the raven. I think that there's something really fascinating.
Where is this Midrash?
The Midrash is in Bereshit Rabbah.
It's a good one. Okay.
I believe. Yeah. That's it. It's a classic.
Second reference for Bereshit Rabbah in our podcast. Way to go, BR.
Hey, well, it is Bereshit.
You're rocking.
Great return, guys. Thank you so much. You have made my week until tomorrow. We're doing a live podcast episode of our new podcast series that we have been talking about called In Good Faith. And it's taking place in downtown Toronto. And I'm really looking forward to it. But the podcast itself is out. And you should go check out In Good Faith because I'm pretty proud of it. And our producer, Zach Hoffman, has done like beyond amazing, like so good of a job producing this series that we are working on. And go check it out. Go check out In Good Faith on wherever you get your podcasts.
Way to go. Way to go, Zach. Way to go, Avi.
That's it.
Look for that.
Thank you for listening to Not in Heaven this week. Our producer and editor is Zachary Kaufman. Michael Freeman is the executive producer. To catch every episode, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support our show, consider making a donation to the CJN at thecjn.ca/donate.